Welcome to Gospel Lessons. I'm Kevin Prince. Today we're continuing our series on false traditions, beliefs often passed down in the church but not rooted in Scripture or the Gospel. These traditions, while sometimes harmless, can prevent a deeper understanding of doctrine. Today we will be discussing if the martyrdom was an inside job. Joining me is Casey Griffiths. Casey is an associate professor of church history and doctrine at Brigham Young University. Before coming to BYU, he worked for 11 years as a teacher and curriculum writer in seminaries and institute. He is an active member of the Mormon History Association, the Latter-day Saints Education Society, and the John Whitmer Historical Association. He is the co-host of the Church History Matters podcast and hosts documentaries on church history for Scripture Central. He is the author and editor of dozens of articles and several books. This series is sponsored by Go and Do Travel, which provides LDS-based cruises offering an opportunity to connect with like-minded members and learn from experts and influencers. I'll be joining the Momentum 2026 cruise, and if you're interested, use promo code PRINCE to get $100 off. All proceeds from Gospel Lessons, including sponsorships, go to charity. Today, what we wanted to do, because we've been doing this series on false traditions, and there have been a growing number of people that I've seen kind of in social media and online and so forth that have been expressing concerns around the martyrdom of Joseph Smith, saying that there are some conspiracies of it being an inside job, that Williard Richards and John Taylor were in on it. They're using some kind of forensics analysis and things like this. Take me through your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that is so strange. So strange, because they are doing some weird stuff with forensics and making suggestions, but the main group that's advocating this just completely goes into left field. And I mean, there are all kinds of contradictory things they do. Like, they quote Williard Richards as their primary source for saying there's a conspiracy, but then they completely ignore a lot of the stuff that Williard Richards said there. One group made a video where they show John Taylor and Willard Richards pulling the trigger and shooting Joseph Smith. And I mean, you don't have to invent a conspiracy. There was a conspiracy to murder Joseph Smith. We've known about it for centuries. There was a murder trial of the people that killed Joseph Smith. They were all acquitted, and that's another story in and of itself. But I mean, this is documented stuff where we know the motives. Thomas Sharp pretty much said in his newspaper that he felt like Joseph and Hyrum Smith needed to be killed. Thomas Sharp was put on trial. Nobody in the community Thomas Sharp or any of the other mobbers lived in disputed the fact that they were the ones that attacked, stormed the jail, and murdered Joseph and Hyrum. I mean, saying that John Taylor and Willard Richards did it is inventing a circumstance that is wholly unnecessary and just flat out contradicts almost all the information that we have concerning the martyrdom. It's bizarre and it's strange, and the only thing I can think of is that they're making this argument because they're trying to assert some sort of deeper feeling that Brigham Young and the 12 were behind Joseph Smith's death, which again, no sources support at all. It doesn't make any sense. Brigham Young was hundreds of miles away when the whole thing happened. But I see their motives as being they want to undermine the current leadership of the church, who trace their authority and their keys back through Brigham Young. So what's the best way to do that? To say, well, Joseph Smith was always in the right. It was Brigham Young that initiated all the things that we don't like plural marriage and everything like that. When in reality, no, the documentary records suggest that Joseph Smith initiated plural marriage, that Brigham Young was doing the best he could to stay true to the revelations that Joseph Smith gave. So it's frankly bizarre. And there's been a number of people that have gone through and refuted their claims. Some of their claims, like I said, are just not based in reality at all. Sometimes they just flat out make up stuff. And I've also been affiliated with a number of experts. Like on the video, they interview one expert named Sam Weston. And when Sam saw the video, he was furious. He felt like they selectively edited what he said. Sam agreed to appear with me at a panel at the Mormon History Association to refute all the research that was in the video on Joseph Smith's murder. And I mean, it's not hard. because the assertions that they make in the video just don't bear up to any close scrutiny. And I mean, just anybody that's familiar with the writings and the records and the lives of John Taylor and Williard Richards will know that these two men were desperately loyal to Joseph Smith. They cared about him. They were devastated by what happened to him, and there's no way they played any role in his death. I mean, you have to do some serious mental gymnastics to explain why John Taylor was the person that shot Hyrum Smith, but wound up with 5 bullet wounds himself. And again, the video just completely goes off the rails in its last few minutes, where they're just inventing and making up stuff that doesn't fit the historical record at all. And the final thing is, you have to ignore the fact that there were 150 people outside the jail trying to get in the jail while John Taylor and Williard Richards were carrying out the so-called murder. So it just, I mean, wow, it's a model of historical inaccuracy where it's, I mean, if it's if it wasn't such a serious subject that affects people's faiths, it would be funny. But it does affect people's faiths, and a number of people have used it as excuses to say, well, I don't trust the current leadership of the church for whatever reason. That's the end game, I think, that they have, is to undermine John Taylor and Williard Richards and thereby point them towards the 12 and then undermine the current leadership of the church. So I mean, that's where they're going for, and that's their motives behind it. And it seems like they don't really care about the facts when they're making up this stuff.
I just wish you'd tell me how you really felt.
So that was a little harsh, and I apologize. I don't want to impugn anybody, but I just can't come to any other conclusion as to why they would be making that. I mean, as a historian, it's just pretty out of left field, to be honest with you, and pretty out of left field in a well documented situation where we have tons of documentary evidence and none of it points in the direction that they're going.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And that's what I think we needed to hear, an alternate, the other side of that coin, which I don't think has been out there very much with all of this. You know, some people just take it, it's like in social media, there's the problem with what's the last word. If the last word is somebody saying there was a conspiracy and it was an inside job and nobody refutes and nobody talks about it, then people just naturally believe the last word. And that's a problem in our society. And so we needed a better last words, I guess.
Yeah, social media is great because everybody gets a voice, but social media is terrible because everybody gets a voice. And a person that comes along with a cockamamie conspiracy theory that makes no sense sometimes can appear as authoritative on a social media platform as somebody that spent a life of study working on this stuff and knows what they're talking about. And it's harmful in historical fields, but it's harmful in almost every field, to where, you know, a person that has a microphone and an agenda can basically get out there and assert something that's false without having any expertise or credentials. It's a major problem that we're dealing with right now, not just in church history, but in all aspects of society.
No, it's true. I went into the doctor's the other day and there was a sign on the wall that I had to laugh at. It said, "Don't mistake your Google search for my double doctorate."
yeah. And I mean, you don't want to say stuff like that because it sometimes comes across as elitist, and a lot of these people are well-intentioned, but I mean, there is a role that expertise plays. You know, the analogy I use a lot of times is I started going to a gym a couple weeks ago, and you know, I don't know anything about bodybuilding, and if I went in there and just acted like I did, I could get seriously hurt. But there are people there are trainers that have been doing this their entire life and have years of experience and can come up to me and say, hey, if you lift this way, you won't hurt your back, right? But if I go barreling in and just assume that I know everything, I'm going to get hurt, and I might hurt other people too. And we're seeing that happen a lot of times in historical and medical and a number of other fields, where people are just asserting that they're the expert because they've done the research, and the research usually isn't more than a couple Google searches. We don't want to feel like elitists, but some people have paid the price to get a degree, to publish, to do peer review. And we ought to trust the experts. I mean, there's a real value in listening carefully to people that have devoted a lot of time to understanding and knowing these subjects well.
Well, this is why I like listening to you and Scott so much on your guys' podcast. You guys are certainly the experts and have put in that time and effort. And I appreciate it. Not just the knowledge you guys have, but your unique ability to the recall and the contextualization is just second to none, and being able to answer the hard questions. So thank you again for that. And thanks for being on the show today, where I can have an expert that can talk about it, because I'm certainly not that. So thank you.
That's kind of you. And let me just add one last thing. Scott and I also seek out experts. We study and we teach church history for a living, but we're just as thrilled when we get Rick Curley or Barbara Jones Brown, who have spent the last 15 years studying the Mountain Meadows Massacre, to come in and help us understand something. So everybody's learning from other people. And again, a desire to be curious and to find out the truth is admirable, but you also have to be careful that you aren't deceived as well.
Yeah, sources are important, and where you get your information is just as important as the information itself. So that's great. Thanks so much, Casey. Have a great day. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us today and learning about false traditions. Remember to subscribe so future episodes are easier to find. Thanks for watching.